Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome you once again to Wednesday nights with myself, Inayat Wadi. We are running a few minutes late already, but as a result of load shedding, obviously it is causing somewhat of a problem in terms of assembling the panel together. But the panelists are here nevertheless. And this evening, as we welcome our listeners, our viewers on the various platforms of Salam Media, the big talking point in South Africa is obviously the president of the country, and looking at the buzzwords. Farmgate has been mentioned over and over again, Pala Pala. And since the report had surfaced last week, the country is deeply engrossed in analyzing what is taking place. Now, looking at some of the latest developments with regards to the president himself, and we know there's been a lot of talk with regard to the Dubai businessman who claimed that he didn't know the president, and also at the same time looking at where this is actually taking us as a country. And according to a number of legal experts talking about the panel misread its mandate, and the argument is laid out clearly in the president's legal papers, but also at the same time looking at some of the opinions, some saying it is not a crisis for South Africa, it is a crisis for Cyril Ramaphosa and the ANC. There are the Ramaphosa backers who are confident that he will be saved, but there are other views that he will not be let off the hook. Now, we need to take this discussion into perspective and try and understand, where to from here and what sort of impact is this likely to have on the president. We know the electoral conference is due to take place next week. And also at the same time, looking at whether he is still in line for a second term as the president of the country. Now, we've got quite a panel assembled this evening, but unfortunately, we've had two people who are not part of this panel discussion this evening, and we have been informed that they are not available. Something has come up, and we are talking about Bram Hanekom, who is not available. Originally, we had him on, and also we've had Nonteba Mhlauli, who is not available. But we do have, as part of the panel, Bishop Clyde Ramalain, political analyst. We've also got Nkoshensa Shezi, RET chairperson, and we've got Papano Pasha, who is joining us, and she is a nominee for the NEC as well. And it's time now to go across to welcome our panelists. I see on the top of my screen, we've got Dr. Clyde Ramalain. Dr. Clyde, good evening to you and welcome to the show.
Good evening, Inayat. Good evening to my fellow panelists, and good evening to your listeners. A privilege to be a part of your team tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And also, Comrade Shezi, good evening to you and welcome.
Good evening, and good evening to fellow panelists as well as your listeners.
Yes, I don't see Papano Pasha on the screen. I'm not too sure whether she is battling to connect with all the load shedding, but hopefully she will be joining us shortly. But just starting off with you, Comrade Chezi, obviously the last week has been it's been a massive week for South Africa since this report has actually surfaced, and we've seen a whole host of views. We've seen mixed views coming through, those for the president, those against the president. And just looking at it from your perspective, I see now Papano Pasha is here. I've just been informed. Papano, good evening to you and welcome.
Evening to all, and your listeners at home.
Yes, Comrade Chezi, I was going to start off with you, and obviously looking at all these developments and ahead of the ANC's elective conference, which is going to take place very soon. Just your reading into the situation.
No, thank you very much for your for that question. I think what has happened is part of what has been happening for the past 4 to 5 years. Cyril Ramaphosa is in charge. In fact, we have vehemently argued in the past years that Cyril Ramaphosa stole the ANC conference. According to the findings of the public protector, he used about R1 billion to corrupt the conference of the ANC. He's not even supposed to be the president of the ANC to begin with. And, what has happened to the public protector is well known in South Africa because she tried to stand up against corruption of Cyril Ramaphosa. And all the other law enforcement agencies and all the checks and balances of our democratic dispensation has been proven to be null and void when it comes to standing up against Cyril Ramaphosa. In fact, it makes us to question the very foundations of this democracy. We've seen what has happened with the former president, the state president, President Jacob Zuma, the manner in which the law enforcement agencies have been eager to bring him to book, and even the judges at the constitutional court breaking the law just to deal with the man, President Zuma. Yet we see a reluctance when it comes to Cyril Ramaphosa. He has been, ever since Arthur Fraser laid a complaint against Ramaphosa, it's been over 3 months now. The NPA has failed to lay a charge. The subs have not arrested Cyril Ramaphosa. When it comes to Cyril Ramaphosa, they start by investigations that are endless. But when it comes to Cyril Ramaphosa's political enemies, people like Comrade Ace Magashule, he was charged, and for many months and years, they're still investigating, but he's already charged. But when it comes to Cyril Ramaphosa, they are shielding him.
Dr. Clyde, from what Comrade Chezi is saying, that they are shielding the president, what would be the motivation behind shielding President Ramaphosa?
Good evening, Inayat, and to the fellow panelists. Yes, well, I think the Cyril Ramaphosa presidency presents South Africa in a very interesting light. Interesting to see the inconsistencies, the hypocrisy of those who called for the crucifixion of some people in the ANC, yet would exonerate him despite the fact that he has, questions to answer in this regard. This schizophrenic type of morality that is being upheld by those who champion the cause of the Constitution as and when it suits them, and at the same time would be completely on the side of wrong, as in the case of Cyril Ramaphosa, is an interesting phenomenon in our country. Now, your question then therefore says, why would there be such a support for Cyril Ramaphosa from a particular group of people? It is important to understand that currently Cyril Ramaphosa is supported essentially by a constituency outside of the African National Congress, and that constituency has been long identified as what we would term, which regardless to who says what, white monopoly capital. He is indeed their poster boy. He is their guy in this regard. So that constituency is alive, and they are alive to the subject matter that if he is to be removed, it would have disastrous implications for their particular agenda. Ramaphosa, in the second instance, is supported by a footprint of a global agenda as well. You recently saw him attending to a meeting with Joe Biden, in that regard. Now, according to records, DIRCO does not have any evidence of what was discussed or record of what was discussed in that particular meeting. Subsequent to this, of course, you have seen him now meet with the new King of England. And of course, we do know these meetings, that meeting was set up before the death of the former Queen of England. However, the point I'm trying to make is that there is more than synergy between the global agenda of white interest as well as the local agenda of white interest. Then Cyril Ramaphosa is supported within the African National Congress by a group of people whom I have come to define as those coattail riders. When you look at the coattail riders, you understand that when this report was released last week, Cyril Ramaphosa, as the president of South Africa, was ready to resign. Nobody can dispute that. The fact that he was ready to resign is not something new, by the way, because we had already known that he had disclosed some time ago to his inner circle, however they're defined, that he would not make it out of the hoods on this particular one. However, the cohort tail riders of Cyril Ramaphosa then convinced him, because their particular their need to continue being alive in the politics of the ANC, whether it be in NOB or NEC or whatever level, is a much more critical issue. Now, just to do a comparison, you would recall that the late Robert Mugabe, who used to lead ZANU-PF, as well as who used to lead, of course, Zimbabwe, wanted to resign at least twice, in 2003 and 2013. In each instance of his intention to resign, it was the ZANU-PF beneficiaries that told him he can't resign for their sake. And I think what we are sitting with since last week, when the report news broke, and the intentions, which was already communicated, that he was going to have a meeting with one of his family meetings. I'm not sure who considers them family, but in any case, one of his family meetings, he was going to disclose the fact that he was resigning. So what made him change his mind is nothing but those who are dependent on him, who told him to fight this issue. But they're not fighting for him, they're fighting for themselves in that regard. So to understand the constituency that's supporting Cyril Ramaphosa is to understand those in the ANC and those outside the ANC. Then, of course, it comes back with what we would call the fourth estate, defined within regards to a particular mainstream media agenda, who, of course, spends hours, days, money, resources, and everything on demonizing some in the ANC, while they don't have the courage of their conviction to call him out for what he has done wrong.
Yes, thank you for that, Dr. Clyde. And just to bring Papano back here into the discussion, Papano, the fact of the matter is, and what we are seeing of late, is the pro-Ramaphosa faction coming very, very strongly. And what has come under scrutiny, what has come under the radar, is the credibility of the report. And we've seen many legal experts questioning the credibility of the report. And this seems to be the line that the Ramaphosa faction is taking to defend themselves against what the panel had what the panel has written in the report. Papano?
Yes, Inyat. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes. Did you get my question?
I got your question, but I didn't get the last part.
Yes, I'm saying that, obviously what has come under scrutiny has been the credibility of the report, and it does appear as if the pro-Ramaphosa faction is adopting that line and holding on to this report and the credibility of the report in defense of the president.
Well, obviously there's a level of truth in what you are raising, but I think we should be honest and do some bit of reflection. I think if we were to look back and use Nkandla as a yardstick, this was the same approach, the same attitude that many comrades had in relation to Nkandla. There was a factional posture that was taken and Nkandla incorrect. What you're dealing with now is nothing new in the ANC. And you've got a question in relation to the discussion itself. Where to from here for the president? I think my major concern now are the attacks on the judges and the advocate who formed part of the panel and who did not necessarily find the president guilty, but stated that the president has got a case to answer. And I think from both sides, if you take either side of the post, one side is vehemently defending when there is obviously a prima facie evidence that the president might have erred in the side of the law. But on the other side, the narrative is that the goal, and my other concern in that is that in 2012, when the president was elected, the deputy president of the ANC,
Yes, I think we have lost Papano there for some reason or the other. But Comrade Chezi, just perhaps, if you could just expand on what I've just asked Papano with regard to the credibility of the report and how this is now being questioned by the pro-Ramaphosa faction.
when eventually he is going to go, either if now, even if he does not come back, but at some point he is going to go. But what is critical now is to ensure that all these factions, at some point, they must stop to exist, because they're not in the interest of the organization. But yes, the president has got a case to answer.
Yes, thank you for that, Papano. Comrade Chezi, looking at this development now, there are those that hold the view that Phala is not a crisis for South Africa. It is a crisis for Cyril Ramaphosa and the ANC. And, how would you react to this statement? Well, I think we are having somewhat of a problem, and I'm not too sure whether Comrade Chezi is around. Comrade Chezi, can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear. Can you not hear me?
Yes, sorry. Were you able to hear me, Comrade Chezi?
Yes, I am. So I was saying that having listened to the narrative that Papano brings, trying to compare the Nkandla with Phala is outrageous. You see, I don't think this program was meant for us to look into Nkandla matter. In fact, it's supposed to be the private dwelling of the former States President Jacob Zuma. For some reason, the former public protector, in her naughtiness and her eagerness to demonify President Jacob Zuma, she then came out with Nkandla report. And we must understand that Nkandla is a big area, but she did that in order to include what was not supposed to be part of the private dwelling of the President Jacob Zuma, so that the money could be increased and it can be made to look like a huge amount of money, as opposed to just investigating the private dwelling of President Jacob Zuma as the terms of references initially stipulated. Nonetheless, let's get to the Phala Farmgate. You see, the Phala Farmgate, there is no need for anyone to support or to be for or against. It's a matter of law and order in South Africa. Cyril Ramaphosa has broken the laws of the country. The work that has been done by the panel, we applaud it. Nonetheless, it speaks nothing new other than what we've been saying, other than what Cyril Ramaphosa himself has been saying. One, he has admitted that the money that was stolen in his farm, yes, it was more than 25,000 rand as stipulated by the FICA, which is against the law. And he also has admitted that he does business while he is the state president. In fact, he goes on to meet his friends, the Nkola's friends, and he says, I'm just moonlighting as a state president of South Africa, but the job that I like is the president of Angola. So here we're dealing with a man who thought he's above the law, and he carries on in that fashion. And unfortunately, there are people who think they must try and understand all these shenanigans that he has done so that they could be accepted by the broad public as great thinkers. It's such a shame that those who aspire to go into our National Executive Committee will talk such a language just to woo the votes so that they could be at the helm of the African National Congress. There is nothing wrong about talking the truth. And the truth is, Cyril Ramaphosa has transgressed many laws, including the foreign exchange and many other laws. The allegation says that he has even flaunted the international relationships, the laws that govern the exchange of criminals or alleged criminals, and he has tortured people, including a woman in his farm. And there's no way that you can speak of factions when people are simply demanding justice to be done. And I don't believe that there are factions. I believe that there are two classes in this society, and there are those that are not conscious of their class and would be co-opted by their class enemy to fight the class enemy's battles, and those that think that they must sound clever by defending what is indefendable.
Yes, and also, Dr. Clyde, the fact of the matter is what President Cyril Ramaphosa is saying, that he wants this panel report to be declared unlawful and invalid, and also submitting that the panel misconceived its mandate, it misjudged the information placed before it, and misinterpreted the 4 charges that were advanced against the president of the country. I think we've lost Dr. Clyde. Papano, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Yes, have you heard the question that I raised for Dr. Clyde?
No, I did not. Please, can you repeat the question?
The fact of the matter is, in his response, the president has said that he wants the report declared unlawful and invalid, and also saying at the same time that the panel misconceived its mandate, it misjudged the information, and misinterpreted the 4 charges that were advanced against him.
Yes.
I mean, how do you read into the response of the president?
Well, fortunately, I took time to, in fact, go through the submission of the president, the first submission of the president to the panel, and the submission that he made that he's going to be taking the report on review. When you really go through the submission by the president, including some of the pundits who have been in support of the president, what you pick up is that there is a serious culture of impunity within the ANC, and it does not necessarily start with the president. In the submission made by the president, he's very dismissive of the panel, which was appointed by Parliament, is very dismissive of their findings, which again are not saying that he is guilty. And he's also dismissive of the serious allegations that have been made. So what is unfortunate is that the president is not even prepared to clear his name. He just wants to take this matter to court. And he wants to take this matter to court knowing that there are some state agencies who have not necessarily come forward with information on whether he broke the law or not, or on whether he was on the side of the law. In that, if you go through the first submission that he made to Parliament, he in fact indicates that he's not even sure or even aware that SARS is investigating him. Now, this is the serious errors which are there in terms of the sins of incumbency. The fact that the people who are supposed to investigate the president are the people who are appointed by the president, and some of these people are friends, well, publicly known friends to Pravin, including the commissioner of SARS. So, this entire process, it becomes muddy because it's not really about justice. I think the president is not interested in clearing his name. He just wants this issue to go away so that he can contest for presidency and hopefully go on and contest again in 2024. Looking at what is currently happening with the president and within the NEC, you can truly tell that many of them do not have the interest of the ANC at heart. Because the narrative is the same. Protect the president at all. Dismiss what the panel is saying. Even if they were to dismiss what the president is saying, even if the president were to take this matter on review, there are still all these investigative bodies which have not come up with conclusive reports. So this is not in the best interest of the ANC. And as I've indicated, for me, that is a major concern. As a member of this organization, the fact that no one takes seriously the integrity and the image of this organization. So it's just sad to actually just to observe what happening.
Yes, thank you for that, Papana. I see Dr. Clyde is back with us. And Dr. Clyde, as Papana is talking about the image of the organization of the ANC, now there are reports that suggest that Phala Phala is not a crisis for South Africa. It is a crisis for Cyril Ramaphosa and the ANC. What sort of damage is this likely to do for the ANC as an organization? Dr. Clyde? Dr. Clyde, I believe your mic is muted. Dr. Clyde, can you hear me? I think we're going to move on. I think for some reason or the other, Dr. Clyde, we can't hear you. Comrade Chezi, would you like to take this one?
All right. So, thank you. I don't know, there is an echo, but I'll go ahead.
Yes, go ahead.
What is happening is that the image of the organization is surely going to be his name is going to be dragged in the mud further. However, in terms of Cyril Ramaphosa's campaign, I don't think it's going to change anything, because Cyril Ramaphosa in the 2017 national election of the ANC, I'm sorry, the national conference of the ANC, he did not have the support he needed to win the conference. Nonetheless, his dirty money won him the conference. Coming this 55th Nasrec conference, he still depends on his money. And you see, if we think we've uncovered the great theft or money that has been laundered or anything that you think, there is nothing that has seen the scope of Phala Phala Farm. And I don't think that that was the last money that this man has. I think he still has a lot of money to fraud and corrupt the conference of Nasrec, the upcoming conference. And in fact, it makes me wonder if the 500 billion that was reported to have been taken as a loan for COVID-19, emergency, if that money is not hidden somewhere to corrupt the upcoming conference as well, because that money was said to have been lost in a matter of 3 months. So we've seen scandals upon scandals, but let me tell you, it's still within the plan, because his plan and that of his handlers is to destroy the ANC. I think it was Paul Mashatile at one stage who said the plan is to keep the ANC below 50%. And that plan has always been spoken about, that the ANC must lose the popular majority so that it can enter forcefully into a coalition government with the DA, and that will be the end of the National Democratic Revolution. That will be the end of the voice of the majority, because what it doesn't matter how revolutionary correct are the resolutions that would have been taken at the ANC conference and other meetings of the ANC, it will simply not be implemented, and the excuse would be clear. The excuse would be, we are in a coalition government and the DA does not want this, so we can't do it. You see, the ANC was founded and formed by people who wanted the return of the land. And the vast majority of the African population is still languishing in poverty today, 30 years later after the ANC rule, are still yearning for the return of their father's land that was taken at a barrel of a gun by the thugs who came into this country in 1652, killed and raped our forefathers and mothers, and took our land. And the ANC is chickening out of the historical mission that it is supposed to do. And therefore, when we're speaking about the image, I don't think anything would worry Cyril Ramaphosa, because if people stop voting for the ANC in their majority, it will be a win situation for Cyril Ramaphosa and his friends who want the ANC to fail on its historic mission of holding accountable the thugs and their descendants who took the land from the natives, and the people who want the implementation of radical economic transformation can forget about it, because we'll be entering into a coalition government. But it's not all over. This is a call that we must make clearly to all the revolutionaries and all men and women who love this country. In fact, I'm very excited that even the white population and all other races are beginning to see that this man is a danger to society. We can't have stage 6 load shedding and the country carries on as if it is normal. During President Jacob Zuma, we have dealt away with load shedding, and this man who came in on a ticket of a clean governance has failed us dismally. He has sold all the national assets. One of the state-owned enterprise, I'm told, was sold for 51 rand. It is time that ordinary men and women of South Africa must wake up and demand that Cyril Ramaphosa must go. The law enforcement agencies, they must do their job. They are napping on the job. And one day, when Cyril Ramaphosa is gone, we must begin to investigate what has taken the National Prosecuting Authority so long just to pronounce on the investigation on charging Cyril Ramaphosa, or not charging him, because if they don't want to charge him, it's fine. They must just simply issue a non-prosecution certificate so that we can prosecute Ramaphosa privately because he has a case to answer. And we give credit to Judge Ngobo, the former Chief Justice, for a sterling work that they've done. And we pray for their safety against all odds. Thank you.
Yes, Papano, just looking at the global agenda that Dr. Clyde was referring to and saying that this has got the footprints and the hallmark of a global agenda playing out in keeping someone like President Cyril Ramaphosa in power. And also, I know you've written extensively about white monopoly capital. Now, we've seen even the ratings agency Fitch saying that impeaching the president could lead to economic uncertainty. Do you buy into this argument?
Time is bad for my side. Will you try and repeat your question?
What I'm saying is Dr. Clyde is back with us. Oh, wait, let me just address this question to Dr. Clyde since he's brought it up. Dr. Clyde, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yes, Dr. Clyde, you mentioned earlier that, President Cyril Ramaphosa and his presidency has got a footprint of a global agenda. You spoke about white monopoly capital. And we're also seeing some sort of international reaction to what is playing out in South Africa. We've seen the ratings agency Fitch saying that impeaching Cyril Ramaphosa would lead to economic uncertainty. And it does appear as if many are holding this view and holding onto this argument for President Cyril Ramaphosa to stay in power.
It's extremely difficult to hear what you are asking me. However, I wanted to just briefly refer to what. Are you there?
Yes, I am here.
Yes, I wanted to engage a little bit on the subject matter of the credibility of this actual report. I think for me, two things are important. This report came about as a Section 89 panel report, which means it is a parliamentary report, a parliamentary institute report. I wonder what would have been the ANC's response if the findings were by President. I wonder. And as we progress with this, are we not, is the ANC not with this highly irresponsible to just decide to reject what a parliamentary process is because it's trying to stop the process? Why doesn't Parliament entertain the report of its own commission, S89 committee in this regard? That's my first point. The second point is, you would recall that the president of the ANC, Cyril Ramaphosa, was given several opportunities to come clean with his constituency, that being the ANC, whether it was the NLDs or the NEC, and he bluntly refused and said this was not their matter. This was a personal matter. Now, the question becomes, if it was a personal matter, when did it become an ANC matter? That the ANC must now come to his rescue. If it was consistently a subject matter right up until October, as far as I can remember, where he was defending Phala as a personal issue in which the ANC was not involved. Why would the ANC now get themselves tied up into the situation to be answerable in defense of him? Now, I understand the closing of ranks issue. However, at this point in time, it is this not allowed the report to stand. Now, also, those who critique the report, for me, they and I'm not a legal specialist. I'm not going to even attempt to claim I'm legally inclined to understand all of that. But there are two dimensions here. There's the legal dimension and there's a moral issue here. So you can take it on review. But if you take it on review, does it not imply that until it is reviewed, its findings stand? So it can't be that you can have your cake and eat it. If you are taking something on legal review, then it must be that up until such time as another court, whichever court it is, had found and reviewed it, that the findings must stand.
So it must be then that within that particular setting, the findings stand. Secondly, if we discount the legal issue and all the subject matter raised on how flawed the report is, the question becomes, is there a moral case? Now, the Constitution of being president contains the subject matter, or rather is defined by a morality aspect, and we can't dispute that. And so are we not therefore hiding behind what we call legal flaws as raised by several of the defenders of the president at this point in time? I'm not for 1 minute arguing or contending that the report is not flawed. I'm dealing with the subject matter of separating the legal issue from what is called the moral issue. In both instances, the president has to contend with that as far as I'm concerned. My last point, the implications for the African National Congress and those who come out bat swinging in defense of the president lays in this, that you can never, the SACC or even for that matter, the Anglican Archbishop not Desmond Tutu, sorry, forgive me for saying that, the Anglican Archbishop Thabo Makgoba cannot claim to hold a moral high ground, to come and defend something which is wrong just because it is Cyril Ramaphosa. If it was anybody else, he would have demanded that the person, particularly so if it was a Jacob Zuma, would be arrested, locked up, and all the kind of stuff. So we can see how dividing Cyril Ramaphosa is for our society. And by the way, it's not a division based upon good and bad. It's a division based upon interest. And in most instances, it is about economic interest, regardless to whether these are priests supporting him, regardless to whether these are what I would call these hypocritical foundations, like, for example, we have with Catholic and them. They are all hypocritical because they're concerned about the subject matter of morality as they advance it. They are more concerned about interest, and in my view, economic interest. So Cyril will continue to go to the conference. The intention, I think, was they had hoped that this parliamentary committee was not going to come up with this kind of findings. They were going to kick it for touch because you already have seen all the other institutions are more than reluctant to engage on the subject matter. We know they are because he controls all of this, from the National Prosecuting Authority to whatever other one he controls. It is his constituency people that are represented in SARS as well as SARB. We have seen and heard how the acting public protector told us a case like this will take years. What hogwash when the panel showed us that if you engage the content in front of you, you can come to a decision. My last point. The president, the panel's report engages what the president said, less than the hearsay subject matter that everybody is raising. It is natural to claim it to be hearsay because Arthur Fraser was not present when the stuff happened. However, on the balanced probability of what the president presented as his responses, we've got to contend with those. And if those are proven or if those shown that it's questionable, then certainly he has to answer on those provisions that, or rather on those issues that have been raised against him. And that is where I see the truth lays at this point in time. What the ANC is now doing and what a Ramaphosa presidency will be doing is that it will never undo the doubt in the minds of South Africans concerning the fact that President Ramaphosa, no different to whom those he claimed or tagged with corruption, is corrupt, he's morally repugnant, he's not respectful towards the Constitution, and he's unfit to lead this country and the ANC for that matter.
Thank you for that, Dr. Clyde. Now, Papano, just looking ahead at the elective conference next week, and as Dr. Clyde mentioned, talking about the divisions and President Cyril Ramaphosa dividing the organization, and we know although the NEC was unanimous as far as taking this matter up on judicial review, but looking ahead at the conference and this show of unity, will that manifest at the conference next week?
Thank you, Klaus, for the question. I'm not necessarily sure of unity in relation to the NEC and what was pronounced by the acting SG, and because we've also had different voices who have indicated that inside the NEC itself, the person who presides over the NEC, he's dictatorial in nature. We also had that through different media houses that some of the NEC members or NWC members did not even get an opportunity to speak at the meeting. So this sign of unity or this narrative of unity, I'm not sure how truthful it is. But in relation to the conference itself, what is unfortunate is that unlike 2017, where one could say that the conference was divided along ideological lines, this conference in particular, I'm not sure what's guiding what delegates or how delegates are going to elect their leader. What one is mainly picking up is that the ANC has been turned into a unitary organization where provinces are now in charge. And in the process, what one is seeing is regionalism and tribalism. So there's not necessarily any ideology. So the likelihood is that the president might come back. The president might be elected again and come back for a second term. But I think what is critical, and I think some of the members of the NEC who mainly are ministers or who sit on positions of power, I don't think they even care. And that is the most, for me, damaging part. And I think for any other person or any other lobby group which differs with the president, I think what they have failed on is to lead this ideological discourse. Besides attempting to focus on the personality of the president, I think there's been a disfavor towards the majority, ordinary millions of ANC members in terms of unpicking these contradictions, these ideological contradictions between those who are on the side of capital and those who might be on the side of the working class. I also think that it's frivolous to make these accusations about the president or the establishment itself. When the president was elected in 2012 as a deputy president, and I always want to affirm this, those who supported him knew that he was a capitalist, and they should have anticipated the contradictions. They should have known that the interest of capitalism and that of the poor and working class, that the ANC rallies behind, will always be contradictory and antagonistic. So what is happening now in terms of when we speak of the establishment, the media, conglomerate, FDIs and so forth, and saying that they are rallying behind the president, for me it should be obvious that all these institutions that support the free market ideas will rally behind the president. And I think what is unfortunate in closing now is that no one has accepted that, and I've heard it in many spaces, no one has accepted that it is them who brought forth the president of who aligns with the market, and they did not anticipate what will happen. So what we are experiencing now are the consequences of the decisions that were taken in 2012. Now the question is, for many of us who are working class, would we be able to rectify this? Because what we are seeing now is austerity measures, structural adjustments, attacks on public sector employees, the poor, and so on. So this should have been anticipated. And by the way, when we raised some of these issues that I'm raising now in 2012, no one wanted to listen. There was arrogance of numbers. And the decisions of 2012 are hitting us. But I don't think what I'm raising now, it should negate the subject that we are currently dealing with. And the fact that the president does not want to account, the president does not want to put the interests of the ANC first. Because by continuing as a president, or by continuing to contest and probably being re-elected, that it's not going to be in his own interest. It's going to damage the ANC. So for me, I think, and I've been raising this consistently, that this culture of impunity, where our leaders are caught out, but they refuse to account, and that is the reason why the ANC is sitting where it is sitting today. That society no longer sees it as a leader of society. And as I reiterated earlier on, that is the most unfortunate part, and it's an indictment.
Well, it certainly is an indictment, and Comrade Shezi, just looking at what Papano is saying, it being an indictment, but also at the same time, this is not only about the ANC, this is about the entire country. And I've heard the working class being mentioned. I've heard about the poor. We know there are millions that are jobless in this country, and we've also heard the latest, and we need to verify this, that this is going to be a huge blow for the President Cyril Ramaphosa, because COSATU, because as I mentioned, it's not only about the ANC, it's about the alliance partners, it's about those that have been backing the ANC and the ANC government all along, the likes of the South African Communist Party, the likes of COSATU. And this report, as I mentioned, speaks about Cyril Ramaphosa losing COSATU's backing to lead the ANC.
Yes, I'm not sure about the report making Cyril to lose the support of the COSATU, because for what I've seen earlier on in the day was COSATU reaffirming its support behind Cyril Ramaphosa on the upcoming conference. Have you heard anything contrary to that?
Well, this is a report that I picked up, that COSATU is, there's a huge blow. And this came about, something like about 10 or 12 hours ago, saying that, it's a big blow for him as he loses COSATU's backing to lead the ANC. But I think COSATU alone will be able to answer that.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Look, I would like to pick some of the issues that were raised earlier on. We must remember that African National Congress as an organization, not only it is an oldest liberation movement in Africa, but it is also the biggest organization in South Africa. And what exactly makes it to be the biggest organization is the very same fact that within the ANC, you'd find the liberals, you'd find the working class, the proletariat, you'd find the capitalist within the same organization. Hence, ANC is called an omnibus. So when building ANC, you do not only look around for the workers or the working class, so to speak, but historically, ANC has always been led by the working class and its ideology. The South African Communist Party having an upper hand in terms of acting as an ideological compass and as a vanguard to the liberation struggle that the ANC pursues. So the ANC has historically been, so to speak, co-opted or captured, if I may borrow that word, by the leftist and the South African Communist Party taking an official role of making sure that the decisions that are taken within the ANC are biased to the working class, the marginalized, the poor, the majority in South Africa. But that does not mean that the ANC was always meant to belong to the workers only. In fact, historically, the ANC was formed and founded by the elite, by the Christians, by people who did not necessarily identify themselves with the struggles of the majority, but people who were educated and wanted some exemption from the British laws that were passed in the country. So they wanted some pieces of land for themselves and not for everybody else. That's why you'd find that only educated individuals would lead ANC, and they will take pictures in suits dressed up like Englishmen and send photos to the Queen and say, Queen, they are Africans who have denounced their religion, their Africanism, and who are Christians now and who think like you, can speak English like you. So that's the history of the ANC. So I think it is a cheap narrative to come and tell us today that this problem was brought by the same people in 2012 who called Cyril Ramaphosa, blah, 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 blah. That is cheap politicking. In fact, that may even lead to laziness to fight for what is right. You see, Cyril Ramaphosa must be judged as one of the thug amongst thugs, and he must be dealt with in that respect. According to the findings of the public protector, according to the findings of the independent panel in parliament. And let there be no excuse for that, because Cyril Ramaphosa represent a class, and that in that class of capitalists, there are many capitalists who are abiding by the laws of this country, who are paying tax in every transaction that they are doing in their own businesses, people who obey foreign exchange laws and many other laws, who do not torture people and kidnap people. I want to believe that there are many capitalists who are abiding, who are law-abiding citizens. So the mere fact that Cyril Ramaphosa was called in by comrades to come into the ANC leadership, it does not necessarily translate to them calling him to come and do all the shenanigans that he has done in the ANC. And in fact, being a capitalist should not be viewed as an insult. You belong to a particular class that owns means of production. And by being part of that class, it does not translate to being a criminal. When an individual like Ramaphosa is alleged to have done some criminal act, he must be viewed as such, and such actions must be taken to hold him into account. Unfortunately, he held a powerful position and he has succumbed, he has oppressed all the authorities and the legal checks and balances in our constitution to hold him accountable. It is for that reason that we must, as activists, rise up and call a spade, and that is to make sure that we get rid of Cyril Ramaphosa as an individual. We are not even trying to chase out capitalists within the ANC. For as long as we are in the capitalist system, capitalist dispensation, we are all participating in maintaining a capitalism in South Africa. And therefore, there is none of us who is a socialist, none of us who is a communist. We may aspire, but we are not. We are part of and parcel of that capitalist class. And we know that the capitalism itself, the greed that goes along with it, will corrupt certain individuals. And when we find out that those individuals are corrupted, we must deal with them. So let us not try and compare this saga with President Jacob Zuma, try to sanitize it and cool it down. No. Cyril Ramaphosa must go. He must step down. He has corrupted all systems of our country. You see, if we were to ask a question, if we were to call Cele into this program, the Minister of Police, and ask him, why have you not arrested Cyril Ramaphosa? You see, there is a student who was said to have been arrested on the spot when he was found to be carrying some dollars. I think it's millions of dollars, trying to leave our country, and he was arrested. Why has there not been an arrest on Cyril Ramaphosa when his hand was found in the cookie jar. And by his own admission, you need no panel to investigate anything. You need no detective. By his own admission, he has broken the laws of this country. You see, whilst the investigation is carrying on, but Cyril Ramaphosa should be sitting in Mampuru prison because he has admitted into some wrong, and he has broken the laws of the republic of our republic, and therefore any excuse, it's just simple laziness or trying to sound clever or intellect. Cyril Ramaphosa belongs to Mampuru prison.
Thank you for that, Comrade Chezi. Dr. Clyde, there are many, in fact, when one looks at the response since the report had surfaced, there are many that hold the view that under the circumstances, President Cyril Ramaphosa is the best place to lead the country. And there are also those who hold the view that there is no obvious successor to Cyril Ramaphosa. How do you buy into that narrative?
Well, I try and answer that question by saying that since the time of Mandela, that question, by the way, that they raised, what happens if it's not Ramaphosa, is not a new question. We heard that question in the Mandela era. We heard that question in the Mbeki era. We heard that question in the Zuma era. So it's not a new thing. I think the idea to make by default leave the country, we are doomed. That is a false narrative. It's a narrative that has a particular interest, and it is being driven by a particular agenda. We accept that. However, the narrative is farcical because the ANC, throughout its existence, and as is evident within the last 50 years, have always produced leaders, have always produced somebody to take over. Now, we can argue as to who liked the person that took over. You would recall that at the time when Mbeki took over, there were questions asked. The time when Zuma took over, questions were asked. The time Ramaphosa took over, questions were asked. So likewise, if Ramaphosa walks off to the sunset of his political career, we cannot and dare not be part of a narrative that says now the last good man has fallen. And that is the false narrative that's paraded and driven by the constituency that governs today or controls our media space, our business, the business world, as well as the ANC, some ANC members in this regard who have vested interests. So I think we should dispense with the idea or the notion that any one African National Congress is irreplaceable. Dispense with that, the false narrative. Secondly, to ask the question, where will we get the next person from? The very same ANC will produce the next leader. Now, that next leader will contest an election, and the ANC will determine at the elections who that person is and who they entrust leadership to in that particular team that he or she would lead come the hour. I think the ANC side is a very capable people. The fact that some have not emerged with as president does not negate the fact, but does not mean automatically imply that they are not capable of fulfilling that mandate. So South Africa should not be taken onto a roller coaster ride of if Ramaphosa, for whatever reason, is bumped over by a bus, probably speaking. I'm not hoping in anything bad, by the way. But if anything that we are all of a sudden left in a conundrum and we have a constitutional crisis, all this stuff is all PR stuff that's high, that is it's just driven by the interest of a particular agenda. So I would believe that should Ramaphosa not make it to the conference, there will be a convening of the conference, whether it sits now in the next 2 weeks or whether it sits a month later or whenever it sits. But let's accept it will sit in this month. There will be a leadership elected that will emerge from there that will continue to lead the African National Congress. And so we don't need to be concerned about who the particular person is if it is not Ramaphosa, because we were not concerned, the same people were not concerned before that time in this regard.
Yes, thank you for that, Dr. Clyde. Papano, just looking at what is playing out on the ground, and I know you are involved at branch level, and just looking at ordinary ANC supporters and ANC members, what is the thinking? What are they saying?
Before Inyat, I try to answer your question. I think I must deal with what Shezi raised. And it's important that we deal with it mainly for your listeners, because we would not want your listeners to have a different interpretation of the ANC, especially its historiography. Shezi indicated that the ANC was formed by the elite, people who didn't identify with the struggles of the people, and people who wanted land. And I hope that I'm not misquoting him. But I think it's important that we clarify this, because those who started the ANC, they were products of a dysfunctional system at that particular time. But the reality is that for the majority of them, if you take Tiklika Isakasime, George Muntiwa, Mangena, and others who were, and you take Pixley, the founding father of the ANC, before he even came up with the idea of forming the ANC, he was the legal representative of Kulabotini of Swaziland. And he was also the legal representative of King Zulu, who at the time was St. Helena Island, and Bata. And if you take George Dikitiwa, who was the third barrister in the country, he was representing the Barolo tribe. And if you take the first Secretary General of the ANC, he in fact was the researcher and the foremost leader in relation to the land question, in particular the 1913 Land Act. And it is recorded that he went throughout the country documenting families who were affected by the decision to legislate land on behalf of the white minority. So this historiography that the ANC was formed by these few people who were just inward, it's not necessarily true. They were products of colonialism, missionary education, and so forth, but were entrenched in the challenges of their people. Now, coming back to what you've asked, Inyat, I think I attempted to answer that. The unfortunate reality in the ANC is that the leaders of the ANC have failed to educate ordinary members on what the ANC actually stands for. The ANC might be called an omnibus, but it remains a disciplined force of the left and the working class. And it has motive forces, and capital is not one of the motive forces of the NPR, or what we call the National Democratic Revolution. So what you're really getting from ordinary branch members is that you have those who are very conscious about what is happening in the country, who are very conscious that SOEs are being dismantled, black executives are being targeted, that the lives of the CEO of ESCOM is being used to destroy ESCOM, to an extent that many have even accepted load shedding normality. So you've got members who understand that, who are able to analyze the objective, concrete reality. But at the same time, you've got thousands of ANC members who are not privy to this reality, who are not able to contextualize or even differentiate between their allies and their enemies, that the poor and workers can never be united with the rich. So they don't understand. That's why when you listen to some of them, they would say that they are supporting the president, as poor as they are, as hungry as they identify with capitalism because they've not been educated on the contradictions, that antagonistic and non-antagonistic contradictions of society. So that's what that's what you are picking up, and that's the difficulty going into this conference. That you might have delegates who understand or who are privy to their condition, their social condition, but at the same time, some of them are not privy to the extent that some of the branch members are backwards, that they are tribalists, they are regionalists and so forth. Especially if you go to areas like Limpopo, they are very clear that they will not support anyone who is not a Pedi, Shanghai, or Venda. So those are the sad realities that we are dealing with in an organization that is clear in terms of its ideological character and what it wants to achieve. So that is the unfortunate part of it, including the issues of the president and the question that you have raised and why we are here today. Many poor people and the working class, and I insist on referring to this because these are the disempowered, the disadvantaged. Some of them are supporting the president and saying, no, it's his money, because they are not educated, they're not given alternative information. So that's what you are dealing with, poverty of ideas, including the fact that you've got the elite, which is insistent on maintaining the status quo. So, I mean, branches, as far as I'm concerned, in relation to my analysis, they do not set the agenda. They follow the agenda. And it's unfortunate that those who are in power, those who control the establishment, are the ones who set the agenda. I would love to hear more voices of Dr. Klein coming out. I'd also love to hear voices of Ushezi also coming out. But voices which people not, because the challenge is that, for example, when you listen to other speakers or other commentators, turn it into conversations about personalities, and that's where we need to use it, because we personalize it as much as you might be correct. But when you personalize some of the issues, you make it about Zuma, Cyril and Beki, it gets to be lost somehow, because it doesn't actually speak to the people on the ground who remain oppressed and exploited by this system. Thank you, Inyas.
Thank you for that, Papano. And also, Comrade Chezi, as Papano mentioned, not speaking to the people on the ground, but also speaking to the youth, because when one looks at the shenanigans that have been playing out and looking ahead, looking at the future of the country, looking at the future of the youth, how much confidence does this instill in the youth going forward in the political landscape that is playing out, and the ANC in particular?
Well, look, let me try and answer your question. I don't think I fully understood you, but what is happening is generally unfortunate. And I would like to agree with some of the things that, Papano has said, that, our leadership or our African National Congress has failed to educate the general population. And in fact, it was part of the conference resolution to start a political school. And I think Comrade Kgalema Motlanthe was entrusted with that responsibility to make sure that our people are educated. Now, if you look into the history of all other revolutions, let me speak at a high level about Cuba, for instance. I once read an article by CIA complaining about how difficult it is for them to penetrate the Cuban Revolution, and saw division amongst the Cubans. they said, it is very difficult. And some of the battles that the Americans tried, when they tried to invade Cuba, they were met with by the citizen, ordinary people of the country, or of the Cubans, who fought and defended their revolution. And one of the things that they identify as a problem to them is the high level of patriotism and high level of knowledge and information that the ordinary masses of Cuba have been armed with. Because when you educate people, you are arming them, and you are giving them the analytical tools that they can use in any situation. So they try to speak ill of Che Guevara. They try to speak ill of the leader of the Cuban Revolution, but they failed because those masses were highly educated. They could see through the propaganda. And unfortunately, that is not happening with the South African politics, and it's not happening. If it's not happening with the South Africans, so what's then is the information that is passed on to the youth. Unfortunately, the youth, those few that are actively trying to find out information, would be fed information, the wrong information, by the media that has proven time and again to be against the National Democratic Revolution, the media that has proven to be working for a particular class in our society, and that class in the main that we've identified as white monopoly capital, as Dr. Clyde Ramalin has said. So unfortunately, that breeds a situation of disinformation. It's breed a cadres that are disarmed in terms of information, that cannot clearly analyze things that come their way. Because part of what we must do in raising up the youth, and banking on the fact that the youth would be able to carry on with this national democratic revolution, which in itself want to address the issue of poverty, of gender inequality in our society, and the question of racial discrimination. So if we do not arm our youth with information and make sure that they can independently analyze and come to a revolutionary correct conclusion, and then this revolution is doomed. And unfortunately, the forebears of this mighty, gigantic organization, the African National Congress, saw it in their wisdom. They were so advanced, such that they could transcend across tribal divisions, and they could work together, amampondo with amazulu, amaxhosa, amavenda, and so forth, and visualize a new South Africa. And in doing so, they also admitted the South African, the Communist Party, the Communist International, to develop a South African Communist Party and infuse it within the African National Congress. And they thought it would work best to have this omnibus organization that will house in these different classes of society, and try and find a synergy among these people. Unfortunately, we've been together with the capitalist. And in fact, if you read around the breakthrough of 1994, the capitalists were playing a very positive role in terms of setting up those negotiations and trying to make sure that apartheid is dismantled. But one question that we did not ask is that, why are you so actively helping us? Because we thought the agenda was the same, but now it proves time and again that the only thing that they wanted was the apartheid to go, because at that time their businesses were no longer as flourishing as they used to, because of sanctions and other issues that were around, the limitations that were around racial segregation and the evil apartheid laws. So today, the capitalist class is showing us flames within the ANC, if they cannot achieve what they want on their own, they are ready to co-opt and corrupt some of our comrades and even our structures. Such organizations, once as powerful as South African Communist Party, they would be found wanting on the question of the class struggle, on the question of guiding the masses, the ordinary, poor, working class of South Africa. Why would a Communist Party advocate for a class enemy as Cyril Ramaphosa? COSATU has taken a position that they are going to support Cyril Ramaphosa for a second term. What is Ramaphosa's second term? Today we're sitting at load shedding, electricity load shedding stage 6. So if you give this guy a second term, you want him to do better what he has done in the first term. So probably is going to take us to stage 12 when he comes back. He has sold SOEs. He has not finished. So if you give him a second term, you are asking him to come back and carry on what he has been doing. 500 billion have went missing in the coffers of the state, and there is no accountability. The law is selective. Comrade Ace Magashule, one of the charges that he's facing is failure to provide oversight. If that was the charge that could be placed on anyone, Cyril Ramaphosa should be sitting in jail today, because he is the president of a country and 500 billion went missing under his watch. So we are in a problem, and unfortunately, there is not going to be any messiah. Those that have tried their best. And in fact, I think this country owe allegiance to Arthur Fraser for the bravery that he has done in terms of unearthing this one aspect, one crime that Ramaphosa has committed in many of other crimes that he has successfully managed to squash them. The CR17 bank statement, nobody would have thought that a man who got into power promising clean governance would go to court and seal a record with allegations of corruption, money laundering, even accepting proceeds from human trafficking and drug dealings. All those allegations are tied up, even allegations that certain sitting judges accepted bribes. And all that in a democratic country where transparency should be the order of the day is yet sealed in a court of law. You cannot do anything with that. And it has been 5 years already. Cyril Ramaphosa is the president. What if one day it is found that indeed the CR17 bank statement must be unsealed, and all sorts of corruption is found there, and President Ramaphosa should not have been the president of South Africa? What should be done with millions of people who have lost their jobs because of reckless decisions of Cyril Ramaphosa? What would happen with tens of people whose shacks have went on fire because of load shedding, lives that have perished under this Cyril Ramaphosa? What would happen if one day somebody gets guts to hold Ramaphosa accountable for Marikana massacre? What would happen if Phoenix massacre would be investigated and it is indeed found that President Ramaphosa instigated violence against people of KwaZulu-Natal when he used tribal lines to explain what was happening and said Zulus were up to something? These are the questions that begs us, and unfortunately, the only weapon we have for ANC members is to go to the Nasrec conference and make sure that Cyril Ramaphosa do not become the president of the organization. And in fact, we should be every day on the streets of South Africa demanding that he must be arrested for all these allegations, because his innocence must be proven in a court of law. There are litans of suspicions of wrongdoing by Ramaphosa. And the only thing now is that we know that Shamila Patohi was appointed by him. And in fact, there are allegations that the National Director of Public Prosecution, Shamila Patohi, has received some bribes from Cyril Ramaphosa. That's the allegation. Unfortunately, it will never be proven because the CR17 bank statements are sealed in a court, not by any motion, but just by a judge who decided that let me seal this thing. Imagine if that happened under President Zuma. How much of noise would be there? All the NGOs that were championing clean governance and standing up for justice have suddenly disappeared. Where are these foundations? Where are these organizations? They went silent because it's not about law and justice, but it's about protecting the loot that they've accumulated during apartheid and making sure that even in this dispensation, the economic injustice that has been done to the vast majority of the African people in the main remains intact even beyond apartheid. Even our generations to come must be inferior, must never share in this wealth of this country, let alone the return of the land. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. And just final thoughts from you, Bishop Clyde.
I think, I would like to say that we are living in interesting times, and it would be an important moment when African National Congress members determined to go into that parliamentary sitting next week, Tuesday, and allow Parliament to stand and allow truth to stand and allow the opportunity to exercise their conscience to stand, because it is essential that we understand that not everybody in the African National Congress agrees with what is currently unfolding, and therefore would be marshaled to just agree to the defense, while there could be the reality of the violations as highlighted and articulated within the report. Because I think at this point in time, South Africa relies upon ANC members that are members of parliament, as well as all other members of parliament, to look at the report and to engage that and to vote, if it comes to that point, to vote for the acceptance of the report, because it is Parliament's report, whether we like it or not. And I would say again what I said in the beginning, had the findings been different in a hypothetical sense, Parliament would have adopted it. It would, at least an ANC Parliament would have adopted it. So does it not appear that it seems that the expectation was that it was going to go a particular faction's way, and now it hasn't gone that way, and now we have all these interventions and political gerrymandering that's taking place on the part of those who are close to the particular faction of Ramaphosa at this point in time. The ANC stands confronted before one reality, and that is that will it allow itself to die at the hands of the defense of a particular person, or will it rise on its values that it always claimed? Will it rise on the landmark values of justice? Will it rise on the landmark values of the interest of the poorest of the poor? If the ANC can't do the last, then maybe the ANC should not exist in this regard. It cannot exist for the livelihood or the existence of a particular politician, regardless who that politician may be, regardless to how well they may be accepted in particular circles. The ANC always has to answer the question, what it was born for, what it was established for, is in achieving that particular goal. If it doesn't so, then society may not need the ANC in this regard.
Well, thank you for that, Bishop Clyde Ramalain, and also to Nkosensha Shizi, comrade. Thank you very much for that. And to both of you gentlemen, we do appreciate you taking time out, being part of this panel discussion. I believe Hapano Pasha has had to go to another meeting, and we thank her for her participation. But for now, we wish both of you all the best. Please take care, and I'm certain we've covered a lot of ground this evening in this discussion. So please take care, both of you, and all the best.
Thank you very much, and all the best to you too.
And to fellow panelists.
That was Bishop Clyde Ramalain and Nkusentsha Shezi joining us this evening, and together with Papano Pasha. Unfortunately, we could not get hold of Nomkeba Mshlauli and Bram Hanekom, who were going to be part and parcel of this discussion. Something had come up, but I'm sure we will try and get both of them at some point before the elective conference that takes place next week. But for now, from myself and the team, we appreciate your time with us, our listeners, our viewers on the various platforms of Salam Media. Please take care. And from myself and the team, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.